Good afternoon, everyone. Couple of technical difficulties, but we are finally on. Good afternoon. My name is Dave Roberts. I'm the Capital Projects Manager for Woodland Pond, and this is my weekly address to on November 8th to give you, an update of what's going on with regards to the renovation here at Woodland Pond. Last few weeks, I've talked about the more detailed design work that we're doing as we kind of get into closer into the design and develop it. And just wanted to kind of give you a little insight into what that process looks like. It gets pretty interesting as we kind of focus on the sort of more detailed aspects of the design. I'm just going to share my screen here. One of the things that we have looked at is, for example, dining. There are various aspects of that, both in the health center and also in the community building. And then, there's aspects of the inpatient, outpatient area that we have also been looking at. And so I just want to give you a bit of insight into our process. As I say, I'm just sharing my screen here. So you may remember this is a health center. One of the main things that we have been focusing on, or the driving design aspects, I guess, is in order to create, if you see my cursor, a more centralized living and dining experience so that the community there has more of a center where people are more drawn to be with one another and to do group activities together, and also to create more daylight bring more daylight into those areas so that they're more enjoyable to be in during the day. The living room on this side, on the left-hand side, and we're looking at skilled nursing at the moment, will have access to a garden. So you'll be able to actually go outside here and access a garden, which I think is a big improvement. And then on the memory care side, the same thing. At the moment they have this smaller area, it doesn't get a lot of daylight, and so we're adding on a dining room which will have great views out to the ridge, but also give a sort of a more personal residential feel in the kitchen, and also change some of the ways that food is delivered. So then we get into this process of talking to our dining team and saying, okay, guys, how do we want to improve the dining experience for our residents in the health center? And, this is primarily Jared and Phil. And they come back and say, well, with this new concept of a sort of community kitchen, what we'd like to do is, actually prepare more of the food in this pantry area and not in a remote location. And so then, as part of the process, we go back to our interior design team, and they have driven this sort of approach in having what they call a country kitchen as a way of sort of making it more friendly for residents. And when you think about the memory care, they're also thinking about small details. And what I mean by that, they're saying, look, it's shown that when the food is plated in front of residents, when they have that proximity to the kitchen where food is being prepared, there's more of a sensory enjoyment. And what that means is that it can encourage appetite and make people want to eat more. And so, it's a great example of how a small design decision can really influence people's well-being in these areas. So that's the motivation from the design team. And then we get the driving force from our dining team, We also have input from our food service consultant, Shelley Holiday, who some of you will have met with in focus groups. And she also gives some input as to what residents want to see in terms of menu items, what their feedback is, and that all feeds into how we're going to improve this food service. In these more recent meetings, we've had Atlantic, who are our food service consultants who deal with equipment and planning. And so Jared and Phil kind of say, okay, these are the meals. This is what we want to prepare. We want to prepare as much of it as we can in that adjacent pantry, the finishing. Still, the main kitchen does most of the prep. And so Atlantic's, and they kind of say, okay, we want this type of equipment, and Atlantic puts together an equipment list that gets fed back to our design team, and they start to lay this out. Once there's a layout, then everyone starts to respond to that layout and see how we can improve it. And of course, then there's also a coordination with the design team to make the aesthetic the way that we want it to be. So there's a lot of players with great experience about delivering food, but doing it in a way that responds to what our community wants. What we're doing here there is different to what they see in other communities. Each community wants to do it a different way. This is, has some similarity, but also there's some differences. And so all our consultants are coming together to figure out the best way for Woodland Pond to achieve their goals. And I'll just share with you, some of you may have seen these images. Sorry, it just takes me a minute to actually get them, but I'm hoping that these are large enough for you to see. When I talk about country kitchen, I'm sorry, it's going to take a minute for me to find the image that I was trying to find here. Now I've lost it. They talk about sort of a more residential, here we go, a more residential sort of scale kitchen. So you may have a counter where residents can sit, but they also actually often have an induction cooktop, so they can actually heat food, even though this looks like counter here. It actually has an induction cooktop that can warm food underneath there. And as you see, it sort of has a more appealing and less industrial kind of feel to it. That's aesthetically what we're trying to achieve. And with our team internally, and also the design team wanting to achieve the program that we're setting out to do. So, that's part of the process. You get an idea of the number of people who are involved, all towards the common goal of providing the best possible food and service to our residents. Here's just a quick blow up of the memory care area. It's changed a little bit since then, but here is the existing memory care living room. It's used as dining as well at the moment. And what we're adding is this memory care dining room, and it actually is larger than what's shown here. And we'll end up with lots of windows, similar to what you see in this photo here, with the tremendous view of the Shawangunk in the background. And once again, here's the country kitchen, sort of residential scale, where food will be plated and have residents part of that sort of process. We also see that, that's in some of the other areas like assisted living. These kitchens, country kitchens, for the residents in the whole health centre, can encourage sort of group activities around the cooking in the kitchen as well. So that's another aspect of what we're trying to achieve here. One one of the other detailed design things that we've been looking at is with the in-person, inpatient, outpatient area. And this is interesting just because, we've met with the entire team there, Jonathan's team, and gotten a lot of feedback from them. And the existing wall of it runs along this line where this is the existing exterior wall. And so you can see we're adding on quite a lot of space here. And one thing that we're putting back that used to be there is the hair salon. We're going to have a hair salon in the health center that's more readily accessible than having people in the health center have to travel all the way over to the other hair salon. If they don't want to do that, they could go here. It's just going to be small for a single chair, but it does provide that amenity close to where they live. And then I just mentioned this inpatient outpatient area because this is one of those areas where it's the small details that are going to make a big difference here. Things like storage. If we can maximize the amount of storage in the existing storage room by just the simple decision of making better shelving in there that's more efficient, then and also doing the same with things that need to be stored within the space, like equipment and so on, then you end up with a much more efficient and usable space. So it's these small decisions that are going to greatly improve the amenity of that space. We're going to have more treatment tables in those spaces, and you will see here a little note, curtains. Rather than having enclosed treatment rooms, we're using curtains in spaces where there are adjacent windows, so that when those treatment areas are not in use, they can be opened up and maximize the amount of daylight that come into those spaces. I think that's really good. Also, actually, Jonathan came up with a great idea of having a shared desking area, which services both the inpatient and outpatient areas. And that is a great way to kind of get the desks, once again, out of the actual main treatment areas and tidy it up and make it much more efficient in terms of bringing in equipment that needs to be used for therapy and not having it cluttered up with a lot of other things. So yesterday we had a great meeting towards the end of improving this area. We are increasing the area of the inpatient side at least. We're probably doubling it. And in the outpatient, I guess we're probably adding 30% there. So maybe a little less, but I think that's going to really help them. But like I say, one of these, it's sometimes the smallest decisions that make the biggest impact in these areas. A couple of the other things that we have been considering, and I think this is kind of gives you an insight into the smaller scale stuff. Well, when I was at the Leading Age conference last week, there was a lot of interest in these sorts of products. And what this is a sensor, which can, they're advanced AI sensing. So what these do is track their motion trackers and fall detectors. And so this little device, which is probably smaller than my hand, can be mounted in a corner of the room or in hallways is a great use. And they cover that entire area. So if anyone falls in that area or has trouble, it can pick it up and report it. And this is just, like I say, there are a number of devices like this, and these are growing trends in the way that we can, provide safe living environments for everyone. I think this is really interesting that these products are coming out. They're using new technology to kind of observe people and keep them safe in our community. Once again, no decisions have been made, for us, but we're certainly keeping an eye on what the latest technology is, and if we feel like it's appropriate, we'll certainly start to look at utilizing these sorts of devices. Another thing we had a discussion about a couple of days ago was all about hardware, door hardware in public areas and the access control. Of course, once you start to touch one aspect of that, you start to talk about security and so on. And that's introduced a discussion about, okay, do we want to keep using keys for resident door locks? And just at an evaluation stage at the moment of, using maybe a fob for opening doors, so that then you don't have to worry about putting in the key. But also there's a great management system in that you can observe to see if residents have been out of their apartment that day. And also you can have more control in terms of if you go away for a month, whether you want anyone to go into your apartment or that sort of thing. And you can also generate a record of who has been in and out of your apartment. Some of these devices, some of the fobs don't, you can keep it in your bag or in your pocket. You don't need to take it out. So I see, a possible advantage there. Once again, these are the products that we're sort of evaluating, thinking about. There's an expense involved, but what we're trying to do is just go through these things and think, okay, what are the advantages here? What are the disadvantages? Is this something that really helps, or is it just something that looks flashy and doesn't really improve the residents' interface, doesn't improve the residents' quality of life? So while we are doing this process of renovation, we are constantly thinking about, how to improve things. And we know that while we're doing it, this is the time to make sort of universal changes if we deem that it's, worthwhile development. I hope, that kind of gives you a little bit of an insight into our design process as we get into, when I've been talking about more detailed design, it often involves more people with specialized knowledge, drawing on their knowledge and bringing them into the conversation. And sometimes that requires a little bit more of a new or renewed look at the way that we've initially approached things. We're a team, so you figure it out. You figure out what the best solution is. And that's kind of where we're at the moment. Next week, we have a focus group on Tuesday with some of the gardening committee. We're going to be looking at the planting plans that the landscape architects have proposed, give them some feedback on that. And I know at the moment they're also developing the plans for the community gardens, because we had a focus group a few weeks ago about the community gardens, and they want to respond to that and develop the designs with regard to that. So less about big picture, more about kind of zeroing in on these finer details and figuring out what they are. I want to just conclude by saying, I think a lot of you know I really enjoy working here, but I will say that I know the last week's been challenging for many people, and I want to say that within the people that work here, we have a real range of backgrounds and beliefs and political persuasions. And my experience is that with mutual respect and possibly some restraint, we work together and we, are here to get things done. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you. Have a great weekend. and I'll see you next week.